Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. To our heart's desire. I wanted to have some kind of practice that could really ground me. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. I'm really happy, and it's really helped me to transform many aspects of my life, if not all. You have to experience it yourself to know what this feels like. It's really amazing.
Hello, wonderful people. I am Micka, MC, content creator, and media personality in Vietnam. In the Micka Show, we highlight practical methods for a meaningful impact on our personal and professional life. Thank you for joining us today, and let the show begin. Clap! Jk, you are a teacher of global perspectives, a stand-up comedian, a promoter, a songwriter, a musician. You've been in a lot of musical bands, but most and for all, you are a Nichiren Buddhist for more than 13 years.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
That's right.
That's why today we're going to talk about the practice of chanting, an amazing practice that can indeed transform our lives.
Yeah, agreed. And I just want to say before we get started, I'm a member of the SGI, which is a international Buddhist organization. What I'm telling you today is just from my experience. I'm not officially speaking on the behalf of the SGI. I'm just a person who's trying to share the practice and share to the best of my ability, my experience with Buddhism, and teach even a word or phrase if possible. So yeah.
Thank you for the disclaimer, don't worry.
Sure, yeah, people coming after me like.
No, but before we start this episode, I want to highlight something, because usually in the show, I will introduce people, coaches, CEOs, personalities that have a new practice that most of the time I don't know about. But in today's episode, you guys are in for a treat, because actually Jk is the person that introduced me to chanting.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I am indeed. So today is very special to me as well to talk about something that I am already practicing for almost a year.
Yeah, congratulations.
So, thank you. So, but now, okay, let's dig in the topic. Jk, before becoming a Nichiren Buddhist, you had different kind of practices such as Ifa, even Scientology, Zen Buddhism, but you decided to devote yourself to Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. Why so?
Yeah, in my 20s, I started to just think about the world in lots of different ways, probably brought on by just experiences that I had, And I found that I wanted to have some kind of practice that could really ground me, because although I was experiencing all these things, I was very rootless, and I'd have all these ups and downs. So I always wanted to have some kind of practice. And then I started sort of dabbling in these other religions, but I found that all of them had some kind of authority or some kind of structure that I didn't like. And at the end of the day, it seemed like the purpose of the religion was for the people to kind of serve the religion, that was the end goal, to make the religion more powerful. And that never really resonated with me. So when I discovered Buddhism, the philosophy of Buddhism, by the way, always resonated with me, but I didn't know it was a practice. I just thought it was okay, that sounds cool. So then when I got introduced to the practice and I started meeting the people, and I found the people to be very encouraging and very much invested in my happiness. And that is the purpose of Buddhism, is for people's individual happiness and for that to affect and change the world. But the focus is on the individual's happiness. And I was like, okay, this is right up my alley, Yeah.
Nice. And do you mind to summarize it a bit and explain what is Nichiren Buddhism about?
Okay. So Buddhism is a religion that's been around for 2,700 years. But in the 13th century in Japan, there was a Buddhist monk named Nichiren Daishonin. And he vowed at a very young age, he wanted to become the wisest person so that he could liberate and cause happiness for the people of Japan and relieve them from their sufferings, which is like the Buddha's original wish. So he studied all the Buddha's writings, and he found that the Lotus Sutra was his highest teaching. The Lotus Sutra teaches that we're not here to worship the Buddha, but each one of us has that potential within our lives. And he found that by chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, we could awaken this really high life condition from within our lives. So long story short, this is what I do. I recite a chapter and a half of the Lotus Sutra in Japanese in the mornings and evenings, and then I chant. You know, Nichiren Buddhist, we chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to our heart's desire. When I first started out, it was just a little bit, you know, and maybe irregular. Now my practice, especially since lockdown, has become very solid. All that said, yeah, I'm really happy, and it's really helped me to transform many aspects of my life, if not all, since I've started doing it. So yeah, we chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo in the mornings and evenings, and we study the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, as well as Daisaku Ikeda, who's my mentor. He's the former president of the SGI. And we transform our lives and try to help people and encourage other people to do the same. So thank you for inviting me here to talk about this.
Sure, and it's funny because you mentioned, so what we chant, the main sentence that we chant is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Yeah. That is coming from the Lotus Sutra. But when you read the Lotus Sutra, there is no mention of the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So, but can you tell us what's the meaning of this sentence?
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't say they don't say the words Star Wars in Star Wars, you know. Sure. So Myoho Renge Kyo is literally the title of the Lotus Sutra, right? Myoho means mystic law. So it's a law that we know it exists, but we don't understand how it works. Like, I know the law of gravity exists, but even if I didn't believe in it, I'm still stuck to the ground. I don't know how it works, but I know it's there, right? Renge literally means lotus flower, right? A lotus flower is symbolic in Buddhism for a lot of reasons, but in this definition, a lotus flower blooms and seeds at the same time. So it's representative of the simultaneity of cause and effect. And Kyo means sound or teaching. Nam, going in the beginning of it, means devotion. So when you say Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you're saying, I give devotion to the mystic law of cause and effect through sound. I don't know why it works. I just know that it does. It really does.
It
yes.
does. Mm-hmm. And can you maybe give us a little bit of practical advice? Like how does chanting looks like? Or maybe we can do it at the same time for the audience. Imagine like how it looks when we chant.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Just maybe 3 times to just say it.
Okay.
But because, so when you guys normally chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you are supposed to have the Gohonson.
Right.
Which is?
To explain, yes, so the Gohonson is, it's the object of devotion, is what we call it. It's a scroll, it's an ancient scroll that was originally inscribed by Nichiren Daishonin in the 13th century. On the Gohonson, which we can't show you a picture of, there's all these characters, Japanese words, and they more or less talk about these different states of life, different Buddhist deities. Down the center it says Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and then sign Nichiren at the bottom. So this piece of paper, its scroll, it's not magical, right? It's just when we chant to it, it sort of serves as a mirror, right? So if you imagine the purpose of this is to realize our own Buddha nature, right? Just like our eyebrows, though, it's difficult to see without help.
Beautiful
right?
eyebrows.
Okay, thank you. I didn't make it up, but I use it. So we need something to help us see it. So we have this Buddha nature, very difficult to see. We don't feel empowered that way all the time. We don't feel completely enlightened, right? So we need this thing. It serves as a mirror. And as we chant to the Gohonson, it's kind of like we're polishing the mirror. And as we do it more and more, we're revealing our own Buddha nature to ourselves, right? So we sit there in front of the Gohonson. We have like a little bell and a candle and some incense.
There's a ritual here to start.
Yeah, it's like,
Let's make it more precious.
Yeah, there's a ritual to make it precious, and also because when we do it in groups, and if you hear people chant in groups, it's really powerful. Then we have like a definitive beginning, and then we can all kind of do it in unison, right? So ring the bell 3 times. We say Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and then we say, right, so we join hands, say, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, and we don't face each other. This is really special, this moment. Never done this before. Never did this with anybody before. It's like just...
You're welcome.
So we do that, and then we recite a chapter and a half of the verse parts of the Lotus Sutra, which is like, takes like 3 to 5 minutes. Won't do that right now. Yeah, right.
And then we chant.
And then we start chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
So I would like to summarize a little bit the practice for our audience that may be not familiar with this. So basically, when we chant to the Jk Hobson, to the object of devotion, it's like we're chanting to ourselves, basically. You're not chanting to somebody else outside, to an entity outside. You have to look at the Jk Hobson. It's like you're looking at yourself. It's just easier to create this idea that you look inside yourself and you're polishing the mirror that is you. So you're like polishing yourself through the practice. And if you allow me to say, the reason we do it twice a day, morning and evening, it's also give us a rhythm. And if I remember well, it's not about the time, it's more about the intensity of what you put in this chanting. And actually, I would like to share with the audience a story that happened to me a few months ago. When I went to Hanoi for a shooting, I felt very down, very sad, and I had to go to shoot this big show. And I was like, okay, I only have 10 minutes to chant. And I just did Nam-myoho Renge Kyo without the prayers. But this, it's like literally I put myself together. I was like, not only I'm gonna shoot, but I'm gonna win this game show. And hours later, like, yes, I did it, and I won it. And it just felt so strong at that moment. Even before going to shoot, for me, I had already won it. So it's this thing that chanting is it's a habit, it's a practice, it's a daily involvement, but it really has the capacity to transform it because it gives you the key to open yourself and to work from inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good description.
Right. You know? Also, you become very wise for free.
It is. They say that wisdom, compassion, courage, and like you felt vitality, like this life force that lets you be able to do that even though you were feeling so down.
Yeah.
Those are some of the byproducts of chanting a lot.
Speaking of which, can you tell us what are the benefits of this practice?
Buddhism likes to create categories, right?
Yes.
So 2 of these categories for the benefits that you receive is we have conspicuous benefits and inconspicuous benefits, right? So conspicuous benefit, like, for example, a few weeks ago, I had a couple of shows, because I'm a showrunner, stand-up comedy showrunner.
Yeah, we said you're a promoter as well.
Right,
congratulations.
Right? Yeah, thanks. But I had these shows that, like, I had barely sold a ticket for, and I had put some money into it, and so it was like, okay, I need to chant that this is going to go well, and I was really worried about it because I had a couple of shows a few months ago that just didn't do as well as I had wanted them to. So I chanted a lot. The show sold out. That was great. So that's considered a conspicuous benefit. It's something that's like physical, tangible, right?
We can see it.
Right, you can see it. An inconspicuous benefit is like, as I'm chanting and I'm realizing, you know what, there's things that I need to change in my attitude, things that I need to change in my business practices, right? Things that I can change about myself that will have palpable effects in the real world. In Buddhism, we say that we are the body, but life is the shadow, right? So, a lot of times in a lot of religions, you say, oh, Jesus, can you, person from outside or being like intervene or whatever. I don't want to be specific, but a lot of them are concerned with some kind of outside force intervening and fixing our lives. Where we realize that when we make a change within ourselves, an inner determination, our lives reflect that change. We see it. They have this phrase that people say a lot is that you can't change the world, but you can change yourself, right? It's sort of Buddhist, but it's not complete because as you change yourself, the world just does change as a response. We are one with our environment. If you make a change in your determination, the things that you do, the world is affected, right? This is cause and effect. It's very simple quantum physicists have figured these kinds of things out, things that Buddhism has talked about for 2,700 years, right? We change, and then our lives change as a response. And as we chant, when we're chanting a lot especially, the changes, we know the changes we need to make. We gain the wisdom and the courage to create the changes that we need to from within our lives. And then we enjoy the responses the universe, the world, our lives reflect back to us. If that makes sense.
It does, because like I felt it myself. It's like not like you become in control of the world, but you just go with the world. It's like the current. You become a current. You're not like a street, a fixed street. You're like water going. Sometimes water will go this way, and you just don't ask the question. You become more flexible. I think this practice also make you more flexible, and you just become trustful. Like you trust more the people, what's going around. Just let yourself go.
And I would say, you have a lot of trust because you trust your life.
You embrace it.
Right.
You embrace it.
You start to become stronger, and your happiness becomes way less dependent on your environment, what this person is going to do. You know, a lot of what people consider to be happiness is based on circumstances like, oh, if I get this job, or I get this girlfriend, or I get these things that are outside, these tangible things. That's when I'll be happy. But Buddhahood is an inner state of happiness that's not determined by your circumstances. So even if you're in the most difficult of times, you still have this really strong, unbreakable reserve of happiness. You know?
Speaking of difficult times and challenges, I would like to ask you, what is the biggest challenge that you had to overcome, and in which the practice helped you to go through?
It was probably when my mom was sick a decade ago. You know, I had this thing, I just started practicing like a year or two before. And in the beginning, the practice was just like me getting all these conspicuous benefits and all these good things happening. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna be, good fortune for the rest of my life, awesome, you know. I was opening up in a lot of different ways, but I didn't realize that what also happens when you start chanting is sort of like your karmic closet gets opened up, and things you hadn't dealt with, you all of a sudden have to face. So anyway, I remember there was this one time I had a few friends. One was a coworker and one was a friend, and their parents were really sick. They were struggling with cancer. And I remember I was chanting for them, and chanting with appreciation that my parents were okay. Then a little voice inside me was like, are you sure? How do you know that? It was weird. It was like a little premonition. It was almost like, get ready. A couple of days later, my mother called me, and then she said she had been diagnosed with cancer. And that was like, really, I wasn't ready for that. It just ripped the rug out from under my feet, under my life. And I started chanting a lot. And the thing is, at the time I lived in LA, and she lived in Puerto Rico. So we were like, thousands of miles away from each other. So I couldn't really be there the way that I wanted to all the time. I did see her, I did visit her, but it was like much later on that I was able to do that. Had one day I remember chanting on and off more or less for about 5 hours, and I got a lot of encouragement from people in the practice. And that's the great thing about having a community. There were people that had family members and loved ones that had gone through things like this, like cancer and other forms of sickness. And they gave me really good guidance, like how to chant for her. And the thing is, when she told me that she got sick, the way that she found out, she danced salsa, and one day she was dancing and she couldn't catch her breath, and she loved dancing. And then when she went to the doctor, they found out that she had lymphoma, was the kind of cancer she had. So I chanted a lot. And while I was chanting, I was visualizing, I want to be able to see her dancing again. I was terrified, but I didn't want to show that. I wanted to be like a pillar of strength for her and to be able to encourage her, So I chanted a lot for her happiness, her well-being, that she'd be able to get through it. And most of all, she wouldn't be sick anymore. After some time doing that, I went to go visit her. I prepared myself to see her because I knew she'd be skinny because she'd gone through chemo. I knew she lost a lot of weight, and I prepared myself to really be able to be like, hey, encouraging and strong for her. And she went to pick me up at the airport in Puerto Rico, and when I saw her, she looked amazing. You know, she was thin, but her eyes were really bright, and she had such a strong life force. You know, I was like, wow, like I don't even have to lie. You know, I don't even have to just bake it. You know?
Yeah.
And she gives me this piece of paper, and it was her clean bill of health that the doctor had given her. I was like, wow, you know. And then a few days later, we went to Santurce, this place in Puerto Rico where they play a lot of live music and stuff. And she was dancing right there in the middle of the parranda with her husband. Just realized that it was an answer to my prayers, but it wasn't like, whoa! You know, it was just, I had so much faith. It was like, yes, this is the way it's supposed to happen. You know, so really deep faith in my ability to change my life and external circumstances came from that experience. And you know, anyone could say, oh, well, it could have been that would have happened anyway, you know, but people who practice this, when we have actual proof that the practice is working and we can show it, it deepens our faith, you know. So really, you know, you have to experience it yourself to know what this feels like. It's really amazing.
So who should chant?
Anybody who wants to be happy should chant. Anybody who wants to realize their highest potential should chant. You know, I mean, and you don't even have to have problems. No. You know, I mean, people who have, if you have things you want to overcome, perfect. You know, you start to take control of your life. You start to realize that you are the cause and life will bring you the effects. You know, and karma, the idea of karma, I think is really misunderstood sometimes. People are like, oh, karma, that means like you messed up and something bad's gonna happen to you. But the good things that you do also come back to you. So to understand, to really, if you wanna understand cause and effect and learn how to make the best causes for your life, you should chant. You know, just if you wanna be happy, who doesn't wanna be happy? You know?
Thank you, Jk, so much for sharing about your dedication to the Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, about all these stories and the passion, the love that you put in this practice. I think it's really inspiring, and the good thing is that we can see the actual benefits on the practice in your life. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for letting me talk about it.
Sure. Before we separate, I would like to ask you one last question that we ask to all of our guests. Besides chanting, what can we do daily to improve the quality of our life?
One thing that I started doing or stopped doing when I started chanting was complaining, right? And it's still something I struggle with, you know, but complaining, and I don't mean talking about your problems. There's a difference between just talking about your struggles and just like when you have this identification with your problems, over-identification, like this is who I am, I'm going through this struggle. Because when we're complaining, what we're basically saying is I have no control over this aspect of my life. Right, so this is just the cards that I've been given, you know? So I went on a complaining diet. I'm on one now, you know, I cheat once in a while, right? But like basically it's a way of saying, I'm not just gonna talk about my problems, I'm gonna figure out like what is it that I need to do to change things. So complaining, also comparing ourselves to other people, because usually when we compare ourselves to other people, we compare ourselves to people that we think have it better off than we do, that are doing better. And it's a source of suffering. It's like, oh, well, this person has this and I only have this, right? And
I appreciate the acting.
Oh yeah, sure, thanks. I act out. Yeah, I'm the king of the act out. You know, so that's one thing that leads us to suffering. So if you're gonna compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to the person that you were yesterday.
Agree.
And make sure the person you are today is just a little bit better.
Thank you. That's very practical advice. And I think we all can do it on a daily basis, go on a complaining diet and stop comparing ourselves, except if it's to compare to ourselves before. Thank you so much, Jk. That was very nice talk. And I would like to send my greetings to your mom and wish her to be always healthy and happy and keep dancing salsa. Thank you, Jk, again. Where can we find you? Wait, where can we find you?
You can find me at Jk Hobson on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you go to Instagram and look up Standup Comedy Asia Out Loud or just Asia Out Loud, that's where I post a lot of my stand-up comedy, show running, and stuff like that. And also look up Crisis, metal band from New York City.
Sure.
Yeah.
Amazing band.
Keep the
Great
volume.
music. So thank you, Jk, for this amazing insight. I wish you a lot of success in all your activities.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah, and it was a pleasure. It's been real.
Peace out, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Micka.
Okay, cut.